When you're on a health journey, in particular a cancer journey, it's imperative that you have a team that's supporting you and working together. This can be a tricky thing to assemble. So in this video, I want to give you 4 questions to help you dial in what you want, and if they're the right people, to be able to help you with that. Now, the point of this is not to say that a certain type of practitioner is better, but to help you really figure out what you want, because at the end of the day, that's what matters most. That you get where you want to go, the way you want to get there, and that you are treated the way you want through the process. Okay, so I'm going to go into a very quick description of what different types of practitioners are and are not trained in, which is going to set the stage for you to understand the questions you need to ask in order to create the perfect team for you. Why does this matter? Because a lot of times people assume that every practitioner knows everything, and that is just not the case. It's not even possible for one person to fully master all the specialties out there related to cancer and recovery. So we need to know who knows what and how to be resourceful. Just like you would never go to an electrician and ask them how to bake a cake, we're not going to go to a certain type of practitioner and ask them about something they haven't been trained in. So let's talk and start with MDs, medical doctors. So this would include oncologists, radiologists, surgeons. They're all trained in understanding prescription drugs and their interactions and how to use them. They're a surgeon, they're trained on how to do surgery. A radiologist is then trained in how to read, interpret scans and things. Now, an MD of any type has little to no nutrition training. While this is surprising to most people, at most, they have a few hours in all of their medical school on training in food and nutrition. They're also not trained in herbs, nutrients, and adjunctive therapies. This is not their wheelhouse. Now, this sounds kind of obvious, but I have clients all the time that tell me they're going to their MDs asking about diet or asking about a certain herb supplement. That's not what they're trained in. Why would you go and ask somebody about things they're not trained in? Right? Okay, PAs, which is physician's assistants. Also, let's talk about nurses and nurse practitioners. These roles are not a full medical doctor, but they're designed to assist a medical doctor, although quite often nowadays they can often stand pretty much on their own. Although none of them do surgery, and again, just like with a medical doctor, they have little to no nutrition, herbal, or adjunctive therapy training. And just to go a little deeper with this, with all of these Western medical practitioners, the philosophy is different in these base trainings. Keep that in mind. They may have learned this or that thing about food on their own, but it's just what they've picked up themselves. It's not a formal training in using food as medicine. Now, with a PA or nurse, their base training is not covering cancer specifics. When we're talking about an oncologist, radiologist, cancer surgeon, they would be trained with cancer specifics, but not necessarily in terms of alternative therapies, rather with standard of care. ND, naturopathic doctor. This is similar to an MD, but they do have some nutrient, herbal training. Depending on the state, they may or may not have the ability to prescribe. And although many rely very heavily on prescriptions now, so it depends on the individual. So for cancer specific training, that would be outside, additional to their basic training. Acupuncturist. This is a branch of Chinese medicine. This person typically is also trained in Chinese herbs, meridians, things like that. Typically, they do not prescribe drugs. This work can be very helpful and can work well with other therapies and practitioners in terms of cancer. And often there are not conflicts with doing this and other modalities. Usually, they're very good at staying in their lane. DOs. Chiropractors. So with their base training, the focus is on the spine and neurological implications. They're not trained in using drugs or in surgery. They're trained to adjust the body, to bring balance, and are usually more holistic minded. Oftentimes, they're going to have other additional trainings and specialties that vary wildly. So keep that in mind if you're comparing chiro to chiro. So what they actually can do can look very different, but they have the same base philosophy. They may may or may not have much focus on nutrition, herbs, nutrients, adjunctive therapies, and they may or may not be trained on cancer specifics depending on those additional trainings. Functional practitioners. Now, this is where it gets really confusing for most people, and really why I wanted to put this whole video out, because a functional practitioner is a layered additional training that can be on top of any other base training. So if you're a functional practitioner, you may be a medical doctor, a nurse practitioner, a naturopath, a chiropractor, a nutritionist, any of these. You have to have a base training, but it can vary what that is. So this additional functional training is training in how to read and interpret functional lab testing and then give recommendations to support the things that show up on the labs. Now, depending on what that base training is, those recommendations would look different, meaning if you get a functional MD, they're reading, interpreting the functional test, and they're likely going to give prescription recommendations. Versus, say, a nutritionist that's trained to read and interpret functional labs is going to focus more on food, herbs, supplements, lifestyle modifications, and such in terms of the recommendations. Does that make sense how the base training plays in here? Super key to know in terms of having appropriate expectations that if you have a functional medical doctor read your functional labs, they're going to be giving prescription recommendations likely. I mean, unless they have some additional nutritional, herbal kind of education, of course. Now, this is the other crazy thing, is that the length of training varies wildly from a few hours to multiple years. If you're only in training for one weekend, would you have the same depth of experience as someone who studied for multiple years? Which one do you want to work with? So this term functional has no licensing or standardization at this point, which makes it important to know that the length of training they went through and what their base training is in. They may or may not have nutrition, herbal, adjunctive therapy, or cancer-specific training. It depends on what that base training was and what other additional things they've trained in. Literally, the functional aspect is about being able to understand and read functional lab tests. And just to clarify, these lab tests are not covered in a standard of care training like medical school. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be more natural minded in their recommendations, which is often confusing to clients. Okay, last, let's talk about nutritionists. So there's two camps that nutritionists fall into. One is more of a dietitian, like an RD, that's going to be trained in and taught the government standardized guidelines. And then there's nutritionists that are focused more on health guidelines, what the research is showing, what clinical evidence is pointing towards working best. The actual recommendations from these two types of nutrition experts will vary wildly. So this is key to know. For either of these, they may or may not have herbal training or adjunctive therapy training or cancer-specific training. Those are all separate things. So again, this is just to give you an overview so you know the scope of practice and the limitations and the training and the bias and philosophy behind some of these different practitioners, because again, you want to know which questions to ask who. All right, now at the beginning of this journey, one of the most important things you can do is ask yourself 2 questions. These questions are for you that are going to help ensure you don't pick the wrong practitioner for you. So question number 1, how do you want to support your body? Stop and think about that. There's no right or wrong here. It's just about your preference. Maybe you've had certain life experiences or things you've learned from friends and family members or seen that have influenced you. Basically, are you wanting to focus on prescriptions or food or supplements or lifestyle interventions? What do you want to do? What kind of things to support your body? There's several different ways that you can combine these things and integrate them together so you can get the most bang for your buck, or in this case, the most for your time and energy as well. Okay, second question that I would recommend you asking yourself is, how do you want to be treated? Now, let's keep in mind all of these types of practitioners at the root are service providers. And as a service provider, you are the one choosing to work with them and pay them. Now, a lot of times because of our insurance system, people feel they don't have a choice. You always have a choice. Some of them may just cost more if it's not being covered by insurance. but there is a choice. It's a choice of whether you want to pay for that difference. But at the root, how do you want to be treated? Let's talk about that. I've heard from clients that some practitioners treat them like they're just a name on a chart. Some of them feel like they're being passed around and no one really knows who they are or what's going on. Some of them tell me, somebody sat down and talked with them for hours and they really felt understood and heard. Some clients tell me they want to be able to access someone to answer their questions whenever they come up, more of a health concierge service. Some want to understand everything, while others just want to be told, here's what to do. There's not a right or wrong answer here. It's what you want. But considering this at the beginning of your health journey can help your expectations be appropriate and may influence what you choose. I have heard several times from clients that they wish they thought about this at the beginning because they may have chosen different, even if it cost more. Okay, now here's 2 more questions that you want to find out about them. And this you may be able to find this stuff on their website or by asking them some simple questions. First would be, are they trained specifically for cancer? What kinds of tools and training do they have? Are they trained in nutrition or herbs or adjunctive therapies? Those are the sexy modalities such as IV vitamin C, ozone, mistletoe, hyperbaric oxygen, things like that. There's so many others. And if you want to learn more about these, check out my video, 7 vital markers to test before doing IV vitamin C. Are they trained specifically for cancer, or do they just work with any type of person on any type of condition? Are they trained in prescribing or surgery? If that's something you want, then you would need to know if that's their training. And some of this may be obvious. So you're looking at what is their background? What trainings have they had? Do not feel bad asking them these things. This is the person that's going to help you heal. You want to know what their perspective is and where they're coming from. This is a job interview and you are the one doing the interviewing. Now, if they don't have the training you're looking for to, utilize in your journey, ask what they're bringing to the table. Ask yourself. And this isn't necessarily what you're going to say to them, but how is this helping you? Is this what you want? Often clients go to a specific practitioner because they feel they're supposed to, even if it isn't the service they want. So just a note to remind you that you get to choose. Would you be better served getting help elsewhere with someone that has the tools and supports that you want to utilize? By having less cooks in the kitchen, it can sometimes be very helpful, especially with cancer if they're not working well together, because you don't need to be the one stuck in the middle. Also, tease out if they will work with someone else that does have the tools you want. So if they're not trained in food nutrition, are they going to work well with a nutritionist, or are they just going to kind of override everything they say and do? A lot of times I hear this from clients that practitioners will say they'll do whatever the client wants, but when it comes down to it, they really just want the client to do it their way. And when push comes to shove, that's when things get uncomfortable. You see this also a lot in obstetrics and labor. The 4th and last question, this is a question you want to maybe ask them or tease out about them. What is your philosophy towards healing? So you're looking to see how this aligns with your philosophy towards healing, and asking them first and getting a feel for it before you share what yours is can be very helpful when talking to a potential practitioner that you might want on your team. If they have something different, you may still want to work with them, but keep your eye on the fact that you're not approaching it with the same philosophy. It's just good to know that going in so that you have appropriate expectations. And if the practitioner you're thinking about having on your team doesn't share some of the same philosophy, maybe ask yourself, would I rather have a practitioner that does share my same philosophy? Is there someone that would be more aligned with what you want and the way you want to go about things that might be a better fit? Because at the end of the day, it's about what you want, because it's your body and you deserve to be able to treat your body with respect and the way that you would like it to be treated. Just know there is hope, and I'm here to help.